Women's Spirituality program here at CIS was founded by women who identified with the second wave of feminism. And one of their primary questions was really what happens when women put their own experience at the center of their spirituality. As the program has evolved and developed over time, we've broadened a lot more to look at a broader group of women from many, many different ethnic and religious backgrounds. And I think that the conversations just become that much richer. How do we actually empower women and create change in a positive way?
The effect of patriarchy is multi-layered.
Somehow women have been oppressed by religion.
We really want to rebalance the world and bring the sacred feminine forward.
Justice. What does justice mean?
What is truth? What is reality? What is right? What is wrong?
We can reimagine it in a different way. Justice is our movement every day towards harmony and balance.
Who I am has expanded. My awareness, my spirituality, my intellect.
It's such an emphasis on the experiential.
How can we as women support one another in a way that honors exactly and perfectly who we are?
Social activism has always to me been a component of women's spirituality. Spirituality sustains us. How has spirituality sustained people who are going through oppression?
When I saw the way that the program was described as a program which was very interested in reclaiming the sacred feminine and all the world's traditions, but also integrating that with a very contemporary social justice analysis. I saw words like womanist, mujerista, feminist, post-colonial theory, and seeing those juxtaposed with a concern around ecology and the environment and women's roles in the world's religious traditions, I thought, this is exactly where I need to be. The women's spirituality movement emerged from a real grounded political critique that women had about male dominance and patriarchy and misogyny in the major world religious traditions, and asked the question, what happens to our spirituality and our spiritual practices and drives if we put women's experiences at the center?
In the program, we have 3 areas of focus. We have women and world religions, feminism, ecofeminism, and activism, and women's mysteries, sacred arts, and healing. We look at a diversity of cultures, and not just like the Abrahamic religions and Hinduism and Buddhism. We also look at African indigenous religions. We look at indigenous religions on this land. We look at paganism. We look at goddess spirituality in religious terms and what it means.
The God I know of Judaism and Christianity is not a male God. The God that I know is non-gender, all gender, beyond gender. The problem is that
students study about specific women that have led movements, and we look at this intersection of spirituality and activism.
When it's difficult to maintain concepts of of healing and spiritual tradition, how do you even do that? How do you challenge something that's already so hard to stay connected to?
In this program, its mission is to look at the roots of why things are the way they are. So the question that you ask here is, well, why? What do they really believe? What belief system allows them to do that? Whether it's oppressive or whether it's encouraging or whatever it is, what is the belief system at the core,
Contemporary women's spirituality looks at our heritage from the Neolithic and Paleolithic times, the evidence for the veneration of women 40 and 50,000 years ago, mostly built on the work of Mariacan Buddhists, but also the work that's being done in current times as women of many different spiritual traditions seek to reclaim the sacred feminine in the traditions of Judaism, in the traditions of Christianity, and in the traditions of Islam.
I teach a class that I've been teaching here for maybe 15 years called The Healing Ecstasy of Sound. My class is primarily experiential, although we do a lot of academic inquiry as well to sort of understand from a more of a kind of philosophical or scholarly point of view what is actually happening when we're having experiences through music and sound.
Once I thought I'd never go tall as this fence.
I feel like there's a huge intersection between singing and the Women's Spirituality program. Singing is something that I have always done because it's something my spirit has called me to do. When I was studying performance for a while, it didn't feel that way. It felt kind of like it was hurting my spirit to be singing in the way that I was. So I needed to take a break from it. I think that's a huge part of women's spirituality. Women's spirituality is all about embodying our own bodies, telling our own stories, leaving room to hear other people's stories, and understanding the social implications of having stories be told.
One night I was in the library in Florida at the university, and I was doing some research on Black Madonnas. A lot of male authors kept coming off the shelves, and then I turned around and a book literally fell off the shelf. And it was Lucia Chavala Birnbaum's book, Dark Mother. And I picked up the book, and I remember thinking, oh, this is exactly what I'm looking for, looking at connecting human stories and human histories. And I remember turning the book over, and I see this beautiful picture of Lucia.
My PhD, which I received in 1964, was in the history of the social sciences, in a sense. Anyway, it was a very good education, which was intersected with the African-American struggle, which reached the campus very early, and the free speech movement, which my students were all arrested. And this certainly had something to do with my education, plus the fact my teaching was very wide. I taught in social sciences and in humanities, and then my degree was in European and U.S. history. We had gone to Italy in 1969 when 5 million workers were in the streets with banners that said, "There is no revolution without women's liberation. There is no women's liberation without revolution." And this has stayed with me up until right now. So I looked at this Black Madonna while I was enfervored by liberation theology, and I saw her as a metaphor for all the dark others who were rising at this time and are still rising.
That you're not allowed in.
I've had two experiences that were most transformational for me. The first one was in my first semester here, and it was with Professor Alka Arora, and it was in a class called Animal Ethics. And I didn't know what I was going to get out of that class, but in that class, I got exposed to a completely new way of identifying with animals as a person of African descent. We explored the domestication practices that happen against animals and animal cruelty, and how that relates to how Black people were treated during slavery. And it completely opened my eyes, and it was something that I had never thought about before. And the second class, we learned about just indigenous African practices, particularly from West Africa, and spirituality. It was similar, like connecting to nature and connecting with these deities and goddesses that empowered me and made me feel strong as a Black woman that I had never been exposed to before.
I took Arisika Razak's class, and one of the assignments she had in her class was to do research into the mother line and then bringing it as a presentation back to the class. And the title of my dissertation is Priestesses of the Goddess, Prophecy, Midwifery, and Healing Among 3 19th Century Mormon Women, a feminist cultural her story of the Morley Cox Tuttle maternal lineage, 1823 to 1915.
I have a BA in Biblical Literature and Religion, and then an MA and a PhD in Philosophy, the latter of which I got at Yale University. humans emerged in the Paleolithic 3 million years ago, and there was a long development of culture, but religion emerges during the Paleolithic. But then I did some student teaching at Yale University, and then I got a full-time job down at UC Riverside. I moved up to San Francisco State then and worked in philosophy and women's studies and helped co-found the Global Peace Studies program. And then I had the opportunity to come here to California Institute of Integral Studies to teach philosophy and join the Women's Spirituality program. So I helped co-create the founding of the Women's Spirituality program with the founder Eleanor Gaydon, the author of the book The Once and Future Goddess. I've been here for over 20 years, and for 10 years I was director of the program. If here you had animism and shamanism, here you begin to get goddesses and gods. And this women's spirituality is not new, it's very ancient, but it's also very contemporary, because more and more women's spiritual leadership and original spirituality has been suppressed, marginalized, and silenced, sometimes by vast acts of religious prejudice and cruelty. And so women now are reclaiming our spirituality, resacralizing our bodies, resacralizing our sexuality, reviving our spirits in ways that seem true to our own nature, and are bringing forth our gifts and talents as women of spirit and wanting to contribute that to the larger world. All of these are exclusive monotheisms, male monotheisms, patriarchal monotheisms, that then...
What exactly is patriarchy? It is not men ruling over women, but it's a system of oppression and hierarchy, and that there always has to be someone with an upper hand over someone that's beneath them, however you want to divide that, economically, religiously, gender, sexuality. It happens in many forms. And then the idea of matriarchy, or an egalitarian society, which is not women ruling men, but the idea of men and women are seen as being equally valuable, having different strengths, different traits, and working together in an egalitarian way. And there's no hoarding, there's no idea of scarcity, but abundance. There's enough for everyone if we all share, if we support each other, if we help each other. As a community, if you're happy, then I'm happier. Because if one of us is suffering or failing, ultimately it's going to affect each of us. So we might as well do this together.
And came into a room of women of all sexual identities and colors and ages and life experiences from all over the world. And we're all women. We all identify and sit in this room and say, I'm a woman. But what does that mean across all of these differences? And how do we honor that and speak to that? And that's so valuable. My eyes were opened so much in terms of what's possible. Yes, we can call ourselves women and we can bond across that. But then let's also talk about how we've had really amazingly different experiences in life. Spiritually, I've been challenged. Ultimately, it just gives me a deeper connection to myself and how that manifests wherever we live, and whether we have families or not, or whether we have significant others or not. However we choose to live our lives, how can we be allies to one another as women specifically, and then also to men.
You know, we're talking about spirituality and the spirituality of women, spirituality of men.
I would say the most challenging part of the program is trying to express to people that women's spirituality does not exclude men. It's a very inclusive program.
I think that one of the most pivotal things we provide is an opportunity for students to really delve inside and look at what is my unique contribution to this world. And for some, that's going to look like, going out there and teaching. For others, it's going to be aligning themselves with a social justice organization.
My dreams and hopes for our students is that they have a place that they can explore the questions of their soul, to explore their own questions, explore their own experience, and really look deeply into it through different ways of knowing, One is academic, of course. There's a very strong academic component in that exploration. And the other is through kind of a self-inquiry. And then the community that we form also, we learn from each other.
We live in a society where young graduates need to go out and find jobs. And yet this program feeds so many souls. So what I would like to see for the future is how feeding your soul can also help you survive economically in this society.
I think until we have a woman president, or many women presidents, that it's no longer a big deal, that we see women in leadership in all of the important institutions of our culture, including the spiritual ones, that feminism's work is not complete.
I'm so struck by these movements, including today, when the young men in Fergusson, Missouri have a hand. You know, that gesture is the orant gesture to the goddess in Africa. You've seen pictures of African women doing this. Now, this comes not from reading a book. I don't know where it comes from, but it gets somehow in each and every one of us. And men, too. Because it's men, it's young men who are doing this now, along with all those magnificent women who are supporting them in Fergusson, all ages, which is an African belief that the divine spark is in everybody, in all ages, from a newborn baby whose wide eyes somehow knows something that when you look at that baby knows something that you don't know. It's astonishing. And if you can just appreciate this is in everybody.
I think the invitation to be vulnerable, to bring one's whole self into the classroom, really opens up the possibility for mystery and transformation.
I really feel like I have woken up and I'm actively engaging in the world.
If you're seeking the voices that have been stifled and oppressed, alternative knowledge and spiritualities and religions and worldviews and philosophies, this is the place that you want to be.